Good evening and welcome to Mental Health Matters After Hours with me, Dr Audrey Tang. Today's show is a little bit different, a little bit spicier. You can see we've got a slightly different background and we will have a slightly different set in our studio as well. We are welcoming sex therapist Madina Demirbas to talk about sexual fetishes. Let's head over to the main studio. Well, we've got Madina back for another night show, which we love. So welcome to Mental Health Matters Office. No, that's the wrong show. Welcome to Mental Health Matters After Hours. Madina, I'm going to jump straight in. What would you class as a sexual fetish?
Before we jump in, I would like to thank you again for inviting me and for talking about the subjects which are so under-talked. And the more we have healthy conversations about fetish, about sexual fantasies, whatever, today we're going to discuss about the healthier relationships people will have, I believe.
Yes, because we're not hiding all of this.
Yeah, because in the UK and in most part of the world, it's still the topic which is full of shame and guilt and misunderstanding and confusion and so on.
Yeah. So yeah, can we jump in?
Yeah, now we can.
With those fetishes. What would you include in a fetish?
So a fetish would be something that is persistent, which is sexual. It's when a person is persistently sexually interested in an object, in a body part, or in a situation which is not necessarily seen as sexual. So it can be leather, a foot, or a certain scenario, power play, and so on.
Wow. And it's almost sort of obsessively, maybe can't get aroused without...
Yeah, that's the thing, because for some people it is essential.
Right.
And that we will discuss later. That's when it can be problematic, not necessarily. And for some people, it's just an addition to an already, to some kind of an exciting addition.
Okay, so I think this maybe relates to the exciting addition, but I suppose it can also be essential. Sex play. So things like BDSM or swinging or other forms of, I guess, sexual enhancements in addition to your day-to-day partner, as it were. What else might we see, and how common is that to desire?
Well, first the BDSM, let's break it down. Bondage, dominance, submissiveness, and masochism, right? Yeah. So this is the community, the type of, it's the practice that involves a lot of play, that involves spanking, and rather what we would call kink activities. Right. It used to be a very isolated sort of suburban gay activity in 1980s and 90s, and now we see a growing number of heterosexual couples engaging in it, and even forming communities and actually growing in the UK as well. So 50% of adults admit that they either have engaged or thought about engaging into BDSM activities. Role play is also part of the kink.
Yes.
It falls under the umbrella of kink. And then we have swinging, which is part of consensual non-monogamy, which is also growing in the UK.
See, is it growing, or do you think awareness of it is growing, or is it a bit of both? Now we're more aware of it, we know where to go to do it.
Exactly. Even in conservative places, what you would consider conservative places in the UK, they would actually have quite open communities and meetings which are not necessarily turning into some kind of parties, where people are discussing, sharing ideas and writing, especially online. You would see that a lot.
Wow. In a way, that's not a bad thing.
No, 50% is higher than I thought.
Yeah, that is higher than I
thought. Yes, and it's not a bad thing as long as there's a consent. And we will talk about it, because consent can be very tricky.
Yes.
What exactly do you consent to? And then I will also talk about specific cases with police involvement and how certain groups get over-criminalized because of who they are, not because they engage in BDSM activity. We'll talk about it later.
I think that's important to recognise as well, because the activity itself is probably not... the activity itself is not a criminal activity if you have consent.
Yeah. And that's a really big question, whether consent, because there was this case where they concluded that consent is not necessarily a ground for
That's
whatever,
interesting.
for the outcome.
So that was my question actually, is, you know, some subjects are quite taboo, but if there's mutual consent, we would perceive that to be okay. But is that not always okay then if there's mutual consent?
Depends on what the outcome was, because sometimes it can be death as well, and people should be aware of that.
Yes.
There are some practices in BDSM, especially including the alteration of your breathing, that can be, that you need to get training for that. And the BDSM community is very clear about it. Don't do it unless you really, really know what's happening. Wow. Because it's easy to lose your partner. And there were cases, sadly, in the UK, very controversial ones.
Wow. I was watching a crime drama recently, I think it was American, and they said that actually that's illegal to indulge in that practice.
It's tricky, you see, in the UK legal system as well. What is harm? Even if it's a consensual harm, there are always cases when it goes beyond the consented harm, and then even if the person says, I was all right, then should the government, you know, it's very controversial, very tricky, should the government actually step in for you because they think that you don't know what you're doing, what you're agreeing to.
Yeah, it's a huge subject, isn't it?
Yes.
So this links into this next question then. When does a fetish or a type of sexual behaviour become problematic?
Well, first, when it's non-consensual, like we discussed earlier, especially for someone who is doing it for the first time, you want to talk really through all the details before. You want to be extremely slow during the process and then after. The aftercare is important. We will talk about it as well. But so it can be problematic if it's non-consensual. Consensual. Secondly, if it interferes with your daily activities and if it interferes with your relationship, if it replaces the relationship.
Oh gosh, there's a lot to talk about. We're keeping Madina and we'll be back just after this.
Our passion for coffee goes way beyond the cup. We believe in a fair production chain in which each coffee farmer plays an essential role. We are proud to support our communities and promote environmental sustainability. Bedford Coffee Roasters guarantees an exceptional experience for producers and consumers. Join us on our journey to extraordinary coffee, where quality, sustainability and fairness come together to create an experience unlike any other. Ground with passion, served with pride. Bedford Coffee Roasters, coffee worth drinking.
Greetings, I'm Angel Marie Monticelli, host of Energize You TV, every Thursday at 11 a.m. Pacific Time. Go to Fresh Takes right here on E360 and get Reikified and energized today.
Welcome back to Mental Health Matters After Hours. We are talking actually very seriously about fetishes, BDSM, consent, and what that means, whether you can even consent to certain acts.
Whether you're one of the biggest also question is whether there's a link between certain type of disorder and being open to consent to BDSM, and the research doesn't show any link whatsoever. So any sort of normal people do get engaged. It's not as if you're if you're trying or thinking about it, doesn't mean that you're a wrong person or there's some kind of trauma that you went through. It could be just that you're interested.
You find it sexually arousing. And that's a really good point to make, actually. Porn, then. So that kind of brings me on to this. Is porn considered a fetish? Because there's a lot of research which says, of course, pornography is objectifying, it's unhealthy, it's all of those things. And yet, erotica, when you put it that way, it can be stimulating. It can be, especially for women. So this is another very grey area. What would you say about porn?
Porn is not necessarily a fetish, it's rather a medium. We call it a medium.
Okay.
However, porn can, certain genres in porn can be around the fetish. So if you find yourself watching it, then that means you have some kind of fetishistic interest, which 30% of people do. Not that they watch the porn, but they have the fetishistic interest.
Yes, yeah.
The problem with porn is the volume and the amount. which sets unrealistic expectations, dissatisfaction in real life, and it sometimes replaces the relationship as well for people, because it keeps them sort of in quote-unquote safe space. But when it comes to erotica, which is more narrative produced, there are at least some emotions in there. That could be actually stimulating for women and for men as well. And one, I said it in previous shows, one of the good books that I would recommend if you're into erotica, if you're into trying to understand your fantasies and so on, is called Want by Gillian Anderson. It's very easy read, it's fun to explore, to see what other women are fantasizing about, and a little bit of analysis there as well.
Yeah, and since the last show I have actually downloaded that on Kindle. I have looked, it's a really great book, and it's people's self-reflections on their fantasies as well, and I think that really, it's kind of, it makes you kind of go, oh no, I'm not weird, or
oh no, not at all.
It's a really nice. It is a really nice book. This kind of links though to my next question, because you very rightly said, if you are stimulated by, say, bondage or something like that, you're not weird. That's a really important thing to say there.
At least there is no research that would support
that. Yes.
Yeah, your friends can say you're weird, your partner can say you're weird, but there is no research to prove that.
But what if there is that need to have that external stimuli all the time because you just cannot enjoy sex otherwise?
That's one of the common requests, that inquiries that I have in my practice as a sex therapist, because when you and it happens more often than we would like it to, that there's something happens within you that you just can get aroused only this way. And instead of, a lot of people would just shame themselves, why I cannot just do it other than leather or whatever. And instead of shaming, I always invite people to sort of try to understand what's the need behind this, because every single fetish, every single fantasy was born from somewhere. It has a history, and I'm really curious about this history. It's not that immediately, oh, now I understand, and I don't know. And we're not trying, another thing is that we're not trying to get rid of this fetish. We're just trying to widen the options a bit more to see, because once you understand what's the need, what's the psychological need behind this fetish, then you can see what are other ways you can satisfy this need without necessarily involving this particular fetish, maybe a different one, but at least, because it can be, it's not a problem if it's okay for you and, you found your way, which gets you good, but sometimes it can be very tiring for partners. Mostly it's partners who come to me and say, like, we've got to solve this because I cannot play up to this
all the time, every single time.
Like, I want, this or that, but my partner would refuse.
That's really interesting. So I know you've got a question in there, but it's like, I watched Baby Girl, which is the Nicole Kidman erotic film. Now, I didn't think it was as erotic as it made out to be, but the point there was this very high-powered woman, and it just resonates with what you're saying, very, very high-powered woman, and what she really wanted was to be dominated, sexually dominated. And when she finally could voice that to her husband, it actually improved their relationship.
Ideally, yes. They showed it like Hollywood style, that it just happens. You have an affair, you come to your husband, oh, actually, this is what I want, and then there we go.
Yeah,
and then there we go. You send this apprentice, whatever, to Japan, and now we resolve.
So that's the actual fantasy, I think.
That is,
But sometimes I think there is that inner need.
We know from research that people in power, usually they would prefer to be submissive in BDSM practices. It sort of unloads all the thinking and the decisions that they make. Yeah. Also, we know from research that people with ADHD would almost benefit from BDSM practices as well. They report to finally have the time when they don't have to make decisions, they don't have to plan, but in the submissive role, when it's finally done for them and they're truly enjoying it. It's like they report I've read some qualitative studies. They report that this is the first time in my life when I feel so free. I don't have to care. I don't have to think. I can just, relax into it. So
Goodness.
That's really interesting, isn't
That
it?
really is, yeah.
Yeah.
Gosh.
obviously, but then, with all this exciting part, there's also, again, I want to remind about the consent and the aftercare that is essential to any practice, no matter how big or small.
Actually, what did you call it, the aftercare?
So the aftercare, it is also the term that I've learned just recently. It's because the experience is so intense, it can be not just physically intense, but emotionally as well.
Yes.
For some people, the bondage, you would see people cry, laugh, there are all kinds of things.
Yes.
So you, unlike, the usual sexual practices, like, oh, we had good time, let's just turn over the back. Some people prefer that, and it's fine, but after such an intense journey, people need to be taken care of, and you have to discuss this. Either it's a cup of tea, or just a hug, or a bathtub, or some people, interestingly, would prefer calling their friend and just talking to them through whatever that is. But you cannot just leave this person laying down there and just digesting whatever happened. No matter if it's the first, second, third time, there's always, this is the part that has to be spoken about in advance.
Wow.
So you kind of plan what you were going to do in advance.
Yeah, definitely.
That does.
It kind of takes away the excitement. Oh, let's keep it a surprise. Don't keep it to, this is not the place. Yeah. Even if you're experienced, there's still a range how far you can go and how far your partner can go.
Yes.
Because ultimately, what you're doing is to get a real extreme emotion or extreme feeling.
Yes.
So you've got to do something with that extreme kind of feeling, haven't you?
You've got to process it and dealing it, even if the person say, I can do it alone, okay, but just offer, you can still offer tea, coffee. Coffee would not be a good idea because it would stimulate you. Perhaps some tea, bathtub, some music, people, a blanket over is a common aftercare practice.
It's really important information.
Yeah, really good
Goodness.
advice. So is fantasizing, is that ever a problem?
Like role play and things like that as well.
Yeah.
I love fantasies. I love working with fantasies because they usually offer, when you dig it down deeper, you see that they offer the problem that the person has and the solution to it.
True.
So, classical example, let's say a client comes and like, I have this persistent fantasy about gangbang, for example, and you would say like, instead of like, why do you want this? This is wrong and everything. We're just trying to understand what's in there for you. So how do you think in your fantasy? How does it make you feel? And she would go, oh, I just don't have to take care about anybody. Oh God! I'm like, and this, because this is what. So it shows that there's a problem that a woman or a man takes too much care of everybody else around, and they just want to have a space where they don't have to do it, where things are done for them, and it just happens to be sexualized in this context, but at the end of the day, it's just about just breathing out. So, and it's always up to client to go for it or not, but understanding so in this fantasy, there is a problem and there is a solution. So, there you go. There's several partners involved, and,
and you don't need to do
you don't need to do anything.
Yeah, so you hear gangbang, you make
you immediately
violence,
go,
but it's not about that. It's about taking away.
No, that's the beauty of sexual fantasies.
They mean different things.
They are emotional in their nature. Yeah. When sometimes it's intertwined and you have to dig really deep to understand.
Yeah.
But at the base of them, they're always about some kind of really cute little need, like bunny need underneath.
It's true.
It just happens to be sexualized, just because we want to be adults, to look like we've got it all together. But all of us have some kind of childhood needs that were not met, and it's okay. And sometimes even fantasizing can be healing, or perhaps even doing it in real life can be a healing experience as well in itself. However, if the fantasy becomes persistent and the only way again for you to get, aroused and everything, then again we would see why is this fantasy, what's in there, you would discuss it with your partner, with yourself, with your sex therapist. Not with your neighbor, maybe.
What if it's about the neighbor?
It's about the neighbor, why not?
Definitely.
Here's your proximity theory, the more you see other people, you're more attracted to. But
gosh, no, that's a really helpful thing to know, actually, because rather than shaming ourselves if we have a fantasy, it is about sitting there and sort of asking, why? What is that saying? What is that actually trying to tell me that I need?
It can be one ChatGPT question away, really.
Yes, true.
Really, you can ask. This is the fantasy that I have persistently. I'm this many years old. This is my life. And then it can show you. It could signify this and that and that. If you want to explore further, you go to sex therapist and so on. But it doesn't always, have to take like a huge step to understand yourself.
That's really interesting. And so what if one partner wants to experiment and the other one doesn't? How would you advise handling that situation?
It usually happens, the discrepancy. In the beginning we tend to play along and we agree to things that we normally don't agree with, and it looks like, we're always on the same page. And then with the time, we understand, actually, I said yes to something I didn't necessarily want and I don't want to say again. And the other partner, but you liked it. Well, actually, I didn't.
And then that's a whole trust thing in there. So what I always advise is, as much as you can, to rather have a respectful conversation about it rather than passive-aggressive or pushing out or shaming into not following your desire. And sometimes the truth is that your partner will just not want it for whatever reason, not because of you. It could be like all kinds of things. We know that parenthood, midlife crisis, hormonal changes, antidepressants, they all affect our libido and our desire to engage in some spicy activities. And then that just takes me back to the thing that you said earlier about how maybe you were engaging in role play and now your partner's just like, I don't want to do that role play again, I can't play the pirate anymore, enough. I mean, that's a conversation that has to be had as well, doesn't it?
Because we're still learning to talk about it in a nice, healthy way. It's not always easy. That's what we're trained during sex therapy training, like to discuss, to talk, how does the arousal feel in you? But it was so awkward. You cannot imagine. I would just rather die there than to speak it out, because even though I thought, I'm more or less, what do you call, sex positive, and I can discuss it and so on, but actually naming things and talking about it, it can be very tricky. So, but after all, but we had to do it so that we can, where we're comfortable with our clients. But for many people, I can see it's still a big taboo, a lot of shame, a lot of guilt, and so on and so forth. So maybe writing, like the first step through writing. And again, you have your ChatGPT. How should I, approach? Which kind of words should I use? It's not about manipulation, for God's sake. It's about really gently approaching, because the more you're going to poke and push your partner, the more it's going to change the dynamic in a negative way, unfortunately.
Oh my goodness.
I wish that just by shouting and shaming things would work, but then I wouldn't have a job.
But shouting and shaming is the way we often do it. That's the problem. And of course, that is going to push somebody right back into their shell. It's never
does exactly the opposite. Nobody was like, oh yeah, thank you for shouting. Now let's have the sex of our lives.
Oh gosh, spot on. Absolutely. We're keeping Madina, and we'll be back just after this. A world without the arts is one without confidence, creativity, and community. And yet funding has been reduced every year. Arts programs have been shown to benefit social inclusion and well-being, particularly for marginalised groups, with projects fostering a sense of belonging, cultivating mutual understanding, and breaking down social barriers and isolation. Participation in arts programs can help boost confidence and open doors to opportunities that may otherwise be inaccessible. Click Arts Foundation offers grants up to £2,000 for grassroots arts projects twice a year,
with our Community Arts Experience trustees meticulously scoring each project on impact and sustainability. To date, we have supported craft and visual arts projects, dance, drumming for wellbeing, and preservation of heritage and culture. If you share our passion, not just for maintaining the arts themselves, but contributing to the many benefits it can bring, please consider making a donation to Click Arts Foundation registered charity.
Welcome back to Mental Health Matters After Hours. We are talking about sexual fetishes, we're talking about consent, we're talking about, I guess, sex that isn't what we conventionally just see as sex when we talk about sex in general. So, but these are conversations that do have to be had, because a lot of what you've said, Madina, we don't talk about. We don't even talk about with our friends.
No.
And I think we need to do that. And actually today's show, we have a studio audience, which means that we are extending that conversation. And we do have a question.
Right. This is quite a deep question and quite personal, about childhood sex abuse and how sometimes fetishes can grow from that. I just wondered what you can share, or what if there's more information about that.
Yeah, specifically about sexual abuse, it's interesting how our brain tries to develop a mechanism to cope with it and to heal from it. And sometimes fetish and or fantasy, even fantasy about a rape, can be sexually stimulating. And somebody would say, why is that, something that traumatized a person so deeply? Why would you even, what's wrong with me, type of question. But the thing is that in your fantasy, usually you are in charge of the fantasy, even though if it's happening to you, you are deciding. And in a way, getting back your agency, which was lost in this experience, traumatic experience. So what I would say is that it can be very tricky. It doesn't work for everybody, but I know I know cases from my practice when this type of fantasy and then perhaps even role play was actually healing for the person. It's the psyche's way of dealing with it and not just overcoming, but actually feeling empowered. And it's not an uncommon fantasy. And in this book as well, Want by Gillian Anderson, this is discussed with great care, and you would see that women would think that this is something absolutely wrong, like you shouldn't even think about it, but many women find it empowering.
Thank you. Like I say, it's a personal thing for me, and it did empower me. It was a fantasy I used to have, and it did empower me, so thanks for sharing.
Thank you.
Thank you. That is really important, actually, because what you say about how fantasy is used, in so many ways, this is underpinning, say, NLP, where you go back and revisit a traumatic time, and then you replace that memory with something else. And what you're talking about there is using fantasy to, as you say, give back the agency, so you can almost rewrite that lack of power.
Yeah.
And that's very healing.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
And this is why we have to talk about this, because I think we wouldn't have had that
but I
question.
want to underline, it doesn't necessarily work for everybody. It can be re-traumatizing.
Yes.
It can be tricky. It depends on so many factors, on how, whether your partner is involved or not involved, and how it's involved, whether you discuss it, whether aftercare happened, and so on and so forth.
That aftercare point is just, I think, we need to keep just emphasising aftercare.
I believe in any sexual activity there should be aftercare. At least some form, some agreement, because it's one of the stages which sets you up for the next sexual act, right?
True.
So not necessarily like discussing what did you like and what you didn't like. And
No analysis.
No analysis. Yeah, but actually like experiencing this connection that happened, or lack of connection, which happens as well, together.
Oh gosh. Okay, so what about when somebody has, I don't like this because has lost the sex drive, that sort of thing. Is there more to work through? But, could it be things that we've got to look at what life's doing to you right now, what your hormones, what's your age, all of those aspects? or is it just, spice things up a bit and you'll get it back? You know, is it quite as mechanical as that?
I wish.
Okay, there's your answer.
I wish it would be. Spicing up can help. It doesn't solve the problems. It can, it can enhance if both people are interested. The thing is that I always, even though I'm a sex therapist, I said it in previous shows, I always look at the broader picture of life of a couple, the trust, the communication, the different dynamic, what's happening personally for each partner that they might not be aware, because what we know from chronic stress is that when you're in it, you don't necessarily recognize it. It becomes your daily routine. We talked about sandwich carers who become automatic at taking care of elderly relatives and their kids, and they're just in this constant shift, and there's not very much space left for the understanding how tired they actually are. So yes, you can always try not putting too much bets on spicing up and in general on sex life.
I think that's
because sex life is just one of the languages that you can communicate.
Yes.
Yeah. If it becomes the only language, then
that's problematic.
That's problematic. But, however, there are all kinds of couples. We know they can work around it, but it will be just harder.
I think that does lead on very nicely to my next question, because when, I guess in my very limited experience of sex, the common questions I hear from friends and things is, you're either having it or you're not, kind of thing. And that's it. That's the problem. But there's so much. There's so much that goes into it. There's so many other things that you could be talking about. Do you have sort of common things that couples present with at all in your practice?
The common situation which I recently get is that people, they generally don't understand. We were so attracted to each other in the beginning. The sex was so great, and so on and so forth. What happened? We didn't change that much. It's been just 5 years, or it's been just just as little as 3 years, and it's gone. And where is it gone? And what's wrong with us? And what I have to remind is that it's absolutely normal tendency for passion to go away. Now, if it happened automatically in the beginning of a relationship, now you need to put a different effort, like a date, perhaps, or even bringing back the seduction part. Because some people can take it as an offense. What, again, I have to seduce her? Well, yes, and it will require effort, which might pay off in the end and might not. It's really, it's interesting how people just expect it to happen by itself, just because they love each other and just because they once had great sex a long time ago or before kids or something.
Yeah, it's the effort, I think, because I think we don't realise, at the start of a relationship, you are putting effort in, but because your focus is that relationship, it doesn't feel like effort. It feels like I'm just going out to see so-and-so, and it's very different. Whereas once you're in that relationship and you're stable, and so you've got that fulfillment and you've got all of those lovely aspects, but then you build in other things around your life.
That's one of the things that shocked me when I was studying the couple therapy and sex therapy, is that I always genuinely believe that intimacy brings the great sex. Yes, to a certain point, but intimacy can kill sexual life just as much. So these two forces, they need to be fed sort of like in a different way. For intimacy, you need predictability, you need to trust, you need friendship, you need to be close, whereas for desire to happen, you need to keep the distance, you need to give each other space, you need to be unpredictable, right? So all of these things, they kind of cancel each other. At some point, they do intertwine. You cannot have just, desire or just intimacy to work. For some people, they need more intimacy for the sexual desire to work. But they are very different. They don't necessarily feed each other up.
Yes.
So you have to, it's like left foot and right foot. You have to balance both of them, take care of two of this.
That's so true, isn't it? Because you're right about predictability and trust and, and immediately you go, that's not very sexy, is it?
Care is one big turn-off For you know, for friendship, that's exactly what you do. I care about your feelings. I'm selfless. You're the priority. Whereas we don't see somebody as sexy when we're taking care of them.
Yes.
When they're too much caring for us. So it has to be selfish bastard that we are attracted to.
But trustworthy and
but trustworthy and listening and you know all of that.
So that's where fantasies becoming. You know, you've got a lovely caring husband, but you fantasize about him being this, as you said.
Exactly. Abusive and or dominant or stuff like that. This is something that you would read a lot in this want book as well. Like, I love my husband, but the problem is he's too much loving. I want somebody less loving to be sexually attracted to him. And this is normal, and this is something that you discuss either through play or through or sometimes you just acknowledging it to yourself brings a lot of ease.
It's true. That's really true. Oh my goodness.
I know, it's multi-layered.
Yeah.
So how do you help a couple who are uncomfortable discussing sex?
Sorry?
How do you help a couple? What do you say to a couple who might be uncomfortable discussing?
Yeah, because that can be awkward, because you're there with
really awkward.
your husband or wife, and you know, you're having to talk about quite very personal stuff.
Yeah, first thing I always say is take your time, take your space. Just because I'm a sex therapist doesn't mean you have to pour it all on me all at once. You're welcome to, but you really don't have to. I respect any pace that people choose. And I always double check if the partner is comfortable with the other partner sharing this information, because it's very sensitive. There's a lot of shame. And there's a lot of embarrassment, and it can really cloud up the whole therapy session if I'm, you know, not taking it slowly enough. So really inviting them into the safe, sometimes space. Sometimes it takes up to like 5 sessions, even though they come with a, you know, with an inquiry about the sex issue. They would still need at least 5 sessions to get comfortable. You know, just being a sex therapist doesn't make me trustworthy right away.
Yeah, of course. And then it will maybe 5 more sessions to get to the real issue.
Yeah.
You know, to get comfortable talking about it in the first place, and then to actually explore.
So there would always be somebody, usually in the couple, that would talk more, and the other would be like just listening, or they would talk for them instead. And this is what I'm also trying to observe and reflect. This is what I see. Is this how it happens? And you know, sometimes I would ask, because people can get stiff even around this topic. Like they would just sit there physically, but their mind is somewhere else completely. And I respect that. There's one thing that I definitely I respect. I'm asking, I'm checking up on them. Would you like to write it, perhaps? Would you like to show it in through some mimics or something? You don't have to necessarily talk, because especially for men, and we know it, for men it's harder to speak out about their emotions and how they feel in the morning, in the afternoon. I don't want to generalize, but we know from the research and from division of men's psychology in BPS. It's a whole different issue, how therapy is not always a matter of sitting in one room doing nothing and just discussing feelings. Can feel overwhelming.
And very odd, very alien too.
I'm here, and they would openly sometimes, I'm here because she brought, I don't want to be here. I'm here because I want her, but I don't want to be here.
And then actually in so many ways, the effort that a man might have taken, or the partner who didn't want to go, has taken to turn up in the first place, is probably all the effort you're going to get for that session.
Exactly.
You know, it's,
there is always one partner who didn't want to come. Sometimes they make it very obvious. Sometimes you know, like this person was dragged in. And again, my job is not to like find who's the guilty one and so on, who's the problem here, but I'm just really trying to explore the space between them and what's the pattern. So this is probably what helps in my work, because my underneath belief is that there is no one person is a problem. So they have the problematic pattern, and my job is to find this pattern and to reflect it to them. So that's why, and I say it as well to them, that I'm not here to judge or to find.
So kind of leading on from that then, some people might find it hard to talk together. You've mentioned the book by Gillian Anderson. Are there any other books that you could recommend to help couples to work out their own problems or who are going into therapy?
I think the classic one is The Secret Garden. It's something,
Yes,
that
I've heard of that one.
That I would recommend. I personally found when I was 6 years old, this is how I became sex therapist, I guess. But when I was 6 years old, I found the book Joy of Sex. I think that affected me really. Because it actually can be very joyful, and like people, the pictures that were there, they were like smiling, against all the odds and all the programming that is dirty, is bad. I'm like, but this book says something else. This was my first time ever learning about sex. It was through this book.
That's really lovely, actually. And actually it shows that it is really important to understand where someone's upbringing has come into their beliefs.
Yeah.
Taught it's dirty, it's wrong, it's,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, in most of cultures, even here in the UK, in the Western cultures, you would get this sort of this upbringing that is dirty, it's wrong. You should be afraid of getting pregnant.
Gosh, that's the one.
Like there are all kinds of mechanisms to scare people off from sex, and then people are actually doing it and ending up being pregnant and so on, because there are so many reasons to that. Obviously, I don't want to just narrow it down, but then there was always this question in my mind ever since I was a kid: if this is so bad, why is everybody doing it? Why these people in the book are smiling? It's supposed to be something bad, but then
that's a really good point. Maybe that's the recommendation for schools. Don't have the PSHE lessons. Just get them all a copy of The Joy of Sex.
It's a good place to start.
And definitely discuss it. It's just by seeing it is overwhelming. But my mom sat me down. She kind of explained the best she could. But I had an adult to talk to.
What a lovely introduction with your mum kind of being so.
She absolutely hated doing it. She just had to. You could see that she would rather not to, but I to this day I appreciate that. Tell her, look, because of you, I'm a sex therapist.
A very successful sex therapist as well.
Thank you.
So thank you.
Yeah.
Gosh.
And on that note, where can we find out more about what you do?
So you can just Google Madina Sex Therapist, Madina, and you would get to my website, to the social media platforms, and I'd be happy to get your messages and to reply to any feedback that you have or inquiries.
Amazing. We're keeping Madina for her top tips, and we shall go over to Test the Trend. On today's Test the Trend, we're going to pull out something that Madina has said on a previous show. And that is sometimes it's a case of booking in time for sex. Whether that's a date night, a romantic getaway, a time and a place where you won't be interrupted or troubled by anyone else, and you make an effort to focus on each other. So this week, focus on finding time for your loved one. It doesn't need to lead to sex, but it is important that we do spend quality time when our focus is on our partner, not on all the other things that we've got going on for us. So that's my challenge to you this week. Book time for each other. We get good at what we practice, so if that works, next time you might find even more time to spend together. Well, we've reached the last part of the show. Madina, again, you've just really opened our eyes, broadened our minds, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me.
We love this bit because this is the bit where we reflect on what you've said and all the things that we've taken away. And there's so much in today's show.
We covered a lot, didn't we?
Yeah,
we covered a lot. Yeah, definitely.
And I think the thing for me is fantasies can be very healing. They're not always, and I absolutely understand that. But in so many cases, it's not anything to be shamed over. You don't need to feel ashamed because there is so much shame tied up with sex. And I think being able to talk openly and being able to express those questions without feeling a sense of shame, that's at least a good start. So, thank you for the work that you do. That's what I've taken away the most.
Definitely. And I think my sort of big takeaway is the art. You mentioned aftercare a few times, but the care kind of at the beginning and throughout and at the end as well, just making sure that person's okay. That's kind of what really came out for me.
Yeah, I think that's something that we don't think about, and I suppose you think about it less the longer you've been in a relationship because you get into habits as well.
Yes.
And that's and it's something that can create intimacy. And that reminds me of the other thing that you said, that desire versus intimacy, it has to intertwine I think for really successful sort of long-term sex life. But you're absolutely right, intimacy with what it brings just feels so unsexy.
Yes.
So completely unsexy. And so if you have that, because a lot of people go, oh yes, well, we've got that intimacy and that, and then you do sort of sit there and go, but maybe we are missing out on the fun
which is also fine, by the way.
Yeah, of course it is. Yeah, of course it is.
If both partners are happy with the sexless marriage, then why not? But if they cherish the intimacy that they have and they don't want to go any further, they're happy with that, then
that's okay. Yes, sexless is okay.
Yeah, absolutely. This is something that couple can, as long as they decide and talk through it.
Yeah.
If it's not an elephant in the room.
Yes.
They really process and accept it about themselves.
I think that's the biggest thing I always take from our shows with you, Madina, is actually 99.9% of things acceptable. Actually acceptable. As long as you're not harming it, and those are rules of the world, you're not causing harm to people, you're not doing something illegal, and I think that's a very healthy way of looking at it. We're going to go over to you, Madina, to give your top tips for safe practice and aftercare when it comes to, I guess, sex games, sex fetishes, and so on.
So the 3 tips that I recommend is the pre-phase, the during phase, and the aftercare phase. So for the first phase, you really want to talk through what you're going to do to each other, what is a no and what is a no word. Because in some cases, in BDSM practices, you're not able to pronounce it because your mouth is closed. So there has to be a sign that would signify that you're not okay. So sort of like a stop word, right? So you talk through these things, maybe even write them through, and maybe even in some cases couple decide to make like a written agreement. Kind of made me think of 50 Shades of Grey when, it was all written down, whatever. It's a very tricky movie, I don't want to discuss it now. But the second phase, when it's actually happening, and no matter how well you think you know each other, things can get on the way, people can get in touch with really difficult emotions. So the best thing to do is to go slow, especially in the beginning, and to keep on checking if this is okay. And then the third part, which we discussed earlier, is the aftercare and making sure that both of you, and this is something that you ideally discuss before you engage in this practice, but is this what you want right now? You mentioned that you want tea, but is there something I can do for you? Because we know from research that practices like this actually can enhance the bond. The bondage can enhance the bond between, not just the bondage, but any extreme, let's say, kink experience that people have, can enhance the bondage between people. And who is there to judge as long as it's consensual, and as long as, everybody involved is getting pleasure in the end.
Oh, love that. Oh, my goodness. Madina, thank you so much. And
thank you.
From all of us here, have a good night.